Stocks on the JSE have opened firmer in line with higher global stock, or the local markets remain volatile though, with investors keeping a close eye on the coalition talks that are taking place in this country following last week's election, which saw the outcome fail to produce an outright winner, an outright majority for any political party in government. Let's make sense of what the way forward looks like, if we dare. Our economics editor here at the SABC is Tshepo, Mongoai, who's with us here in studio. I say if we dare because very few people know what's likely to unfold in the next 2 weeks. But let's just begin with just getting a general sense of how markets responded during the election itself. I know there were jitters, and how things are seeming now after 9 o'clock.
Absolutely. I mean, you remember Thursday we've seen a lot of blood on the floor with a lot of stocks falling sharply, 1%, 2%. But we've seen some retraced coming through on Friday, with some starting to gain. The rand also, I mean, we didn't touch 19 rand, and some people were saying perhaps we could touch 19 rand to US dollar. But if you look at the current levels, of course, 18 rand 80 to the US dollar, we're not far from that. And of course, 19 rand will be a psychological level, a very important level if we break above that level. But of course, the volatility still remains. Good news is that we've seen that positive momentum that was starting to build up on Friday. It's coming through. Even today when the market opened, the all-share index up almost 1%, 1.1%. A lot of support coming through from the financial stocks, the likes of Standard Bank up over 2%. And we've also seen the rand hedge stocks, likes of Naspers, which carries a lot of weight on the JSE, and that's able to also bring in some positivity in the markets. It's up sharply, about over 3%.
Sure.
So, the questions that have been asked have not been answered. The concerns have not been dealt with. Those issues remained, and I do expect that the local market will be volatile. We could see any move either way, depending on what's the outcome of these negotiations with the coalition partner, or the government of national unity, as they call it.
Right. And it's difficult to kind of gauge how the markets, or what the markets prefer, right? Because there are a number of scenarios being thrown out there, right? Sure. The ANC, we know, is the popular party, certainly not a majority, but they could either go with some kind of grand coalition with the DA that has its own set of permutations, or this concept of forming some kind of alliance with the MK party and the EFF. Is it clear how the markets would respond to either of those, or does it come down to the nature of that coalition and perhaps even the policy positions that they take?
I mean, one thing is that the market will definitely react negatively if there are any radical changes in terms of policy directions. And of course, the constitution is sacrosanct. It's very important. It's key. That remains in terms of what has been agreed on. So there are, of course, in terms of the medium-term policy framework that the National Treasury has pronounced during the budget. There are a lot of commitments that government has made, and certainly if you change that, that is going to create a lot of nervousness in the markets, because they are holding government to deliver in order to put the local financial policy framework and budgets on a sustainable trajectory. We certainly know that our budgets and our finances are not where they should be. So that is very, very important. The work of the Reserve Bank, of course, needs to be respected, and that will also bring a lot of confidence in our local markets.
Yeah, that's important, because one of the parties calling for the Reserve Bank to be nationalized, and I'm sure if that were to happen, there'd be a great response. We also heard the latest repo rate announcement on Thursday. However, after this election, at least from where I was sitting, you certainly got a sense that a whole lot more political parties are measured in how they respond to the outcome. There's been a call to accept the outcome by and large, barring a few organizations. That kind of response must bode well for investors who are watching where this country might be headed.
And I think partly is the reason why we're seeing this improvement in the local markets, the performance that we've seen in the local markets, because there is some kind of belief that perhaps things are not as bad as they were made to be. The parties can find each other, but of course, all that the market is looking for is certainty in terms of what are we going to do, what kind of government is going to come out, is it going to relate to what is already in existence, some of the policy framework, is it going to be an overhaul, or is it there's going to be a continuity on those policies?
Yeah, we'll be looking very closely to see how financial institutions are marked after this election. And I know sentiment is a big part of how markets typically relate. Do we have a sense of how at least even the international community has watched this election and what the sentiment afterwards might be?
Well, many of them have not quite pronounced, but those that we have spoken to, you still get a mixed feeling in terms of what exactly do they see developments. I think number one, they are actually happy with the fact that we've had very peaceful elections, and that's a point for South Africa, and it will go a long way. Now we are going to be judged in terms of how we come out with a coalition government. South Africa has dealt with very complex issues in the past, and they've certainly demonstrated that they can weather the storm. It doesn't matter what the issue is. We have been able to deal with a lot of issues that affect us as a nation. And there is some kind of hope that we should and we will be able to deal with that. But that, not taking that away, we have a lot of issues in our economy that remain unresolved that we need to deal with. And I think those discussions, hopefully, will look at how are we going to, as they deal with the coalition's conditions, if there will be, how are they going to address the unemployment, poverty, our budget? We need to grow the economy to ensure that we have enough money in our fiscus to deal with the issues like infrastructure that is not good. So those are the issues that needs to be a backdrop of those negotiations.
Without a doubt. And hopefully there are small wins along the way. I mean, it's been almost 70 days of no load shedding. I know that's bode very well for especially small businesses who form a big part of how the economy itself performs. But to your point, yes, a lot has changed, but a lot actually hasn't, right? We're still dealing with some of those major structural issues. And in fact, some economists speak about economic reform at a structural level, whatever that means.
True.
I imagine we'll be listening in very closely on whatever formation of the government has to say specifically about those age-old problems.
No, those issues remain. The inequalities, especially in the past 20 years, have widened sharply. Skills among very young people who should be productive, who should be helping to grow this economy, who have energy, but they are unemployed, they're idling, doing absolutely nothing. One, because they just don't have the relevant skill. Other countries are leaving us behind in the technology age, where it is, you need some kind of skills. In fact, we do have jobs in South Africa, but many of our young people cannot qualify to do those jobs. Our education system, despite a lot of money that we put, education is one of the biggest recipients of the fiscus, but the outcome are not satisfactory. So there are small, on a micro and macro levels, issues that we really need to address. Crime is one issue that is actually affecting investment in this economy. And until there is a clear direction in terms of how those issues are addressed, and of course, we'll remain to experience lackluster economic growth because those issues are not addressed. For example, issue of competition. we do not have competition in the country. You have very few players that dominate the market, and the smaller players find it extremely difficult to enter various sectors. In fact, some of the players deliberately show that the barriers are lifted. Some happen through organized structures that they put together as association or industry bodies, and they ensure that new players who come in, it's just hard for them to go in.
Right.
So we still have all those issues that are impeding economic activity and, as a result, growth.